I moved into my mother-in-law's house. Then she started knocking on our bedroom door at night. Be respectful, she said. I thought she was just controlling, until she cried, looked at my husband, and said, I had him first. So I gave her the one thing We moved into his mother's house because we were desperate. Not because I wanted her involved in every corner of our marriage. Connor lost his job after company budget cuts, and at first, I believed we could handle it. We had some savings. I was still working from home when I could. We cut everything down. Then our rent went up. It was the kind of increase that makes you sit on the edge of the bed and stare at the wall because you don't know what else to do. Connor was already ashamed about being unemployed. He tried to hide it, but I knew him. He got quiet. He stayed up late scrolling job listings. He smiled less around the kids. He kept saying, I just need one interview to go well, in this flat voice that scared me. That was when his mother, Savannah, started offering her house. At first, I said no. Actually, I said, absolutely not. Connor didn't fight me right away. He knew why. Savannah and I had never had some huge screaming feud, but there was always something under the surface with her. She was polite in a way that made you feel judged without being able to prove it. She never said, you're doing it wrong. She said, oh, that's one way to do it. She never said, my son deserves better. She said, Connor was always so easy to take care of before. Little things. Sharp things. Things that sounded harmless if you repeated them to anyone else. But after the rent increase, her offer started sounding less like an option and more like the only open door. She lived in a quiet suburb outside Louisville, in a 2-story house. She kept saying there was plenty of room. She said family helped family. She said she hated the thought of her grandchildren being stressed because of money. Then she said, Connor needs peace right now. He can't rebuild himself if he's worried about keeping a roof over your heads. Your heads. Not his family. Not all of us. Your heads. I caught it. Connor didn't. Or maybe he did and pretended not to. That night, after the kids were asleep, Connor brought it up again. Daisy was 6 and had started asking why Daddy was home so much. Wyatt was 3 and still thought everything was normal as long as he had his dinosaur cup and his blanket. Connor said it would only be for a few months. I said, that's what everyone says before they get stuck. He rubbed his face and said, I know my mom can be a lot. I laughed, but not because it was funny. Connor, your mom doesn't think I married you. She thinks I borrowed you. He didn't like that. He said I was being harsh. Maybe I was. But I was also right. Still, we moved in. I told myself I was doing it for the kids. For stability. For Connor. For breathing room. I told myself I could handle a few comments if it meant we didn't burn through every dollar we had. The first week, Savannah acted like a saint. She cleared out 2 bedrooms. She bought snacks for the kids. She told Daisy she could help plant flowers in the backyard. She gave Wyatt a plastic bin of Connor's old toy cars and said, these were your daddy's when he was little. That should have been sweet. But the way she looked at Connor when she said it made my stomach tighten. Like she was handing him back a piece of himself she believed I had taken. I ignored that feeling. I ignored a lot of feelings back then. At first, the comments were small. Daisy asked for cereal before dinner one night, and I said no. Savannah leaned over and said, Grandma says one handful won't hurt, then winked at Daisy like I was the boring one. When I told Wyatt not to jump on the couch, Savannah said, he's little. Boys need to get their energy out. When Connor made himself a sandwich, she took the mustard out of his hand and said, you never liked that kind. He looked at me and smiled like, see, that's just mom. I started hating that smile. Because that smile meant he had already decided none of it counted. If she corrected me, it was love. If she ignored me, it was habit. If she stepped between us, it was because she cared too much. Every time I got annoyed, Connor said, she means well. I wanted to ask him, then why does it only hurt me? But I didn't. Not yet. Savannah had rules, though she didn't call them rules. She called them the way I keep my home peaceful. Shoes by the door. Dishes rinsed immediately. No toys in the living room after 7. Laundry only on certain days because she didn't like the machines running constantly. No snacks upstairs. No locked bedroom doors unless someone was changing. That last one bothered me right away. I said, we're adults. We need privacy. She smiled and said, of course, sweetheart. But with children in the house, doors should be open. What if one of them needs you? I said, they can knock. She looked at me like I had said something disgusting. Children should never feel like they need permission to reach their parents. It sounded reasonable if you didn't think about it too hard. That was Savannah's talent. She could wrap control in concern until you felt guilty for noticing the rope. I started locking the door anyway when Connor and I went to bed. Not every night, but sometimes. I needed one closed door in that house. One tiny sign that our marriage still belonged to us. For a while, Connor and I were more like roommates than husband and wife. Not because we didn't love each other. We were tired. He was stressed about interviews. I was working around the kids. Savannah was always nearby. In the kitchen. In the hallway. At the bottom of the stairs. Suddenly needing something every time Connor and I sat too close on the couch. If I leaned my head on his shoulder, she would come downstairs and ask him to check the thermostat. If we laughed too loud after the kids went to bed, she would appear in her robe and say, "Some of us are trying to sleep." If Connor made coffee for both of us, she would say, "You never used to drink it that strong." It was like she couldn't stand any proof that he had a life with me that didn't include her. Then one night, after the kids were asleep, Connor and I finally had a normal moment. I'm not going to be graphic. We're married. We had been stressed, broke, embarrassed, and living in his mother's house for weeks. For one night, we felt like us again. Not parents. Not guests. Not two people quietly panicking about bills. Just husband and wife. The next morning, Savannah was ice cold. Not annoyed. Not tired. Cold. She slammed cabinets. She barely looked at me. She asked Connor if he had slept well, then stared at me like I had committed a crime. I kept replaying the night before in my head, wondering if we had been too loud. I felt embarrassed, but I also felt angry that I had to feel embarrassed in the first place. Later that day, while Connor was at an interview and the kids were watching cartoons, Savannah cornered me in the laundry room. She stood in the doorway while I was folding towels and said, "I heard everything last night." I froze. My face burned so fast I felt dizzy. I said, "I'm sorry if we were loud. We'll be more careful." She didn't soften. She looked disgusted. Then she said, "You're a mother now. You're not some teenager sneaking around in a motel. There should be boundaries in a family home." I stood there holding a towel, feeling like I had been dragged into the street. I said, "Savannah, we're married." She said, "That doesn't mean you need to act like that under my roof." That? She kept saying that like my marriage was something dirty. I wanted to yell. I wanted to tell her she had no right. Instead, I swallowed it because we were living in her house, and I hated that she knew it. When Connor got home, I told him. He looked embarrassed before he looked angry. That should have told me something. He said, "I'll talk to her." And he did. Technically. I heard pieces of it through the door. He said, "Mom, come on." She said, "I'm uncomfortable in my own home." He said, "Okay, we'll be more mindful. We'll be more mindful." Not, "Don't speak to my wife like that." Just, "We'll be more mindful." I lay in bed that night staring at the ceiling, feeling something in me quietly crack. After that, Savannah got bolder. She started knocking if our door was closed too long. She would say, "Just checking," even if it was late. She told Connor the house had been emotionally tense and suggested we sleep in separate rooms until things calmed down. I actually laughed because I thought she was joking. She wasn't. She said Connor needed proper rest while job hunting and I was being selfish by keeping him up. She said the kids had been restless. She said the house felt overstimulated. She said couples sometimes needed space. I said, "You're asking my husband to sleep away from me because you don't like that we have a normal marriage." She lifted her chin and said, "I am asking you to respect my home." That was the first time I snapped. I said, "No, you're asking me to stop being his wife while we live here." She went quiet. Then she said, very softly, "Maybe if you acted more like a wife and less like a distraction, he would have a job by now." I wish I could say I had some amazing comeback. I didn't. I just stood there because it felt like she had slapped me. That sentence stayed in my body all day. When Connor came home, I told him. He looked exhausted before I even finished. That hurt more than I expected. I wasn't trying to add stress. I was trying to tell him his mother was humiliating me, controlling me, and making me feel like a stranger in my own marriage. He said, "Can you just let it go for now? We're almost out of here." But we weren't almost out. He still didn't have a job. We didn't have enough savings to sign a lease without panicking. And every day in that house, I got smaller. I stopped laughing loudly. I stopped touching Connor in front of her. I stopped correcting her when she undermined me with the kids because I didn't want another scene. That's the part I'm ashamed of. Not leaving sooner. Not because I was weak, but because I kept telling myself peace was the same as survival. Then our anniversary came. 7 years married. We couldn't afford a real date, and we didn't have a babysitter anyway, so I tried to make something out of nothing. After the kids fell asleep, I put on a sweater Connor liked, poured 2 cheap glasses of wine, and ordered takeout with a gift card I had been saving. Connor smiled for the first time in days. We sat on the floor in our room, eating noodles out of containers, whispering so we wouldn't wake the kids. It reminded me of our first apartment, back when we had no money but somehow everything felt lighter. For a little while, I forgot where we were. Connor reached for my hand and said, "I'm sorry this has been so hard." I said, "I just miss us." He squeezed my hand. "I do too." Then came the knock. Loud. Sharp. Not polite. A warning. Connor closed his eyes like he already knew. Savannah's voice came through the door. "I know what night it is, and I'm asking you both to be respectful." The room went silent. Something in me went still. Connor stood up slowly and said, "Mom, not now." but I was already at the door. I opened it. Savannah stood there in her robe, arms crossed, face tight with that fake calm she used when she wanted to look reasonable. I said, "You are not part of our anniversary." She blinked. "Excuse me?" I said, "You heard me. You are not part of this marriage. You are his mother, not his wife, not our landlord in our bedroom, not the person who decides if we can hold hands, sleep beside each other, or celebrate being married." She started crying immediately. Not sad crying. Angry crying. The kind people do when they want witnesses. She said I was vulgar, disrespectful, ungrateful. She said she opened her home to me and I turned it into that kind of place. She said I had no class. She said I had been waiting for a chance to turn Connor against her. Connor said, "Mom, stop." She didn't. She pointed at me and said, "You think you know him better than I do? You think because you married him, you own him?" I said, "No. I think because I married him, I'm allowed to be his wife." That was when she looked at Connor, crying and shaking, and said the words I don't think I'll ever forget. "I had him first." Everything went silent. Even Savannah looked shocked that she had said it out loud. Connor stared at her. "Mom, what the hell?" She tried to backtrack. She said she meant she raised him. She meant she loved him first. She meant she sacrificed everything for him. She meant I didn't understand because my kids were still young. But the truth was already standing in the hallway with us. She didn't see me as Connor's wife. She saw me as the woman who took her place. I walked back into the room and grabbed a bag. Connor followed me, panicked. "Leah, what are you doing?" I said, leaving. He said, "It's late." "I know. The kids are sleeping." "Then help me carry them." He looked at me like he didn't know who I was. Maybe he didn't. Maybe I had been quiet for so long that he forgot I still had a line. He said, "Can we talk about this in the morning?" I shoved Daisy's pajamas into a grocery bag and said, "No. I'm not sleeping one more night in a house where your mother thinks our marriage is a competition she lost." Savannah stood in the hallway crying louder now. She kept saying, "I didn't mean it like that, and you're twisting my words, and you're taking my grandchildren from me." That last one almost made me laugh. My grandchildren. Not Daisy and Wyatt. Not the kids. My grandchildren. Everything belonged to her if she could say it first. I picked up Wyatt. He was warm and confused, his little face pressed into my neck. Daisy woke up when I slipped her shoes on and asked, "Mommy, are we going home?" I said, "We're going somewhere safe tonight." Connor flinched when I said safe. Good. I wanted him to hear it. I told him, "You can come with us or you can stay here. But I'm leaving." For a second, I truly didn't know what he would do. That second felt longer than the whole marriage. Then Connor grabbed Daisy's backpack and said, "I'm coming." Savannah made a sound I had never heard from her before. Like a sob and a scream mixed together. She said, "Connor, don't you dare walk out on your mother." He stopped. My heart dropped. Then he turned around and said, "Mom, you made my wife afraid to sleep in the same room as me." I should have stopped this sooner. It wasn't a perfect speech. It didn't fix everything. But it was the first time in months I felt like he saw me. We went to my friend Molly's townhouse that night. I called her from the driveway with my voice shaking and she didn't ask for details. She just said, "Come here." Her place was small. The kids slept on an air mattress in the living room. Connor and I slept on the floor with one blanket between us. It should have felt humiliating. Instead, I slept better than I had in weeks. No footsteps outside the door. No knocking. No one listening. The next morning, Connor sat at Molly's kitchen table with his coffee untouched and said, "I failed you." I didn't comfort him right away. The old me would have. The old me would have reached across the table, squeezed his hand, and said, "No, you were stressed. It's okay." But it wasn't okay. So I said, "Yes, you did." He nodded like he deserved it. He said he had been so ashamed about losing his job that he felt like he had no right to challenge his mother. She had given us a place to stay, and he let that make him a child again. Every time I complained, he heard it as one more problem he couldn't solve. So he chose the easiest path. He asked me to be quiet. I told him, "You didn't just ask me to be quiet. You asked me to disappear." That broke him. He cried. I cried too, but not in the same way. His tears were guilt. Mine were exhaustion. Savannah blew up our phones all day. First she called Connor. Then me. Then she texted paragraphs about family, respect, gratitude, and how I had poisoned her son. When neither of us answered, she messaged Molly, even though they barely knew each other. Then she posted vague quotes online about sons forgetting who loved them first. Connor saw that and blocked her for a week. That was the first time I felt like he chose me without being forced into it. During that week, we made a plan. Connor got another interview. Then another. I picked up more work. We found a small rental house on the other side of Louisville. It wasn't fancy. The kitchen cabinets stuck when you opened them. The backyard was tiny. The bathroom had ugly tile. But when I walked into the bedroom and closed the door, I cried. Because it closed. Because nobody knocked. Because it was ours. Connor got a job the following month. A good one. Enough for us to breathe again. We moved in with secondhand furniture, a borrowed dining table, and boxes we still haven't unpacked. Daisy asked if Grandma was coming to see the house. Wyatt asked if we were going back to Grandma's. I didn't know how to answer. That's the complicated part. Savannah eventually apologized to Connor. Not really to me. To him. She told him she had been emotional and lonely. She said she felt replaced. She said she had opened her home and been disrespected. She said she loved the kids and didn't deserve to be cut off. Her apology to me was, "I'm sorry you felt attacked, but I was uncomfortable in my own home." I told Connor that wasn't an apology. He said he knew. But he also said, "She's still my mom." I hate that sentence almost as much as I hate she means well. Because yes, she is still his mom. I know that. I'm not trying to erase her. I'm not trying to punish her forever. I don't want my kids growing up in some cold family war where every birthday becomes a battlefield. But I also don't know how to sit across from her at Thanksgiving and pretend I didn't hear her say she had him first. I don't know how to let Daisy and Wyatt sleep at her house when I know she thinks boundaries only count when they protect her feelings. I don't know how to trust that she won't teach my daughter that being a wife means staying small, or teach my son that his mother's comfort matters more than his partner's dignity. So I set rules. Savannah can see the kids at our house or in public. No sleepovers. No unsupervised visits for now. No walking into our home like she owns the air. No comments about our marriage. No jokes about taking Connor back. No private guilt trips to the kids. If she wants a relationship with us, she has to respect that Connor is not just her son. He is my husband, and he is their father. Connor agreed. But I can tell it hurts him. Some nights, after the kids are asleep, I see him sitting quietly with his phone in his hand, not calling her. I know he misses the version of his mother he thought he had. I know part of him wishes I could just move on so he doesn't have to feel torn. And part of me feels guilty for that. Then I remember the hallway. I remember her robe. Her crossed arms. Her voice through our bedroom door. Her tears when she realized she couldn't control the room anymore. And I remember the words. I had him first. That sentence changed something in me. I used to think being a good wife meant being patient, polite, understanding, forgiving before anyone even asked. I used to think keeping peace was proof of strength. Now I think sometimes peace is just a prettier word for surrender. The revenge wasn't yelling at her. It wasn't exposing her online. It wasn't making Connor choose between us forever. The revenge was leaving. The revenge was closing a door she couldn't open. The revenge was building a home where my children see their mother take up space. I still love my husband. We're better now, but not magically healed. We've had ugly talks. Honest talks. The kind where you say things you were scared to say because pretending almost ruined you. He told me he should have defended me sooner. I told him I should not have had to beg. We're trying. But I refuse to make myself small again just so his mother can feel big. Now I'm the difficult one. The unforgiving one. The woman who took things too far because I won't let my mother-in-law have the same access she had before. Some relatives think I should let it go because we were living under her roof. Others say she crossed a line most mothers would never even approach. Maybe both things are true. Maybe I was a guest in her house, but maybe she used that house to remind me I was beneath her. All I know is this. She had him first. But I was the one who finally reminded everyone that he was not hers to keep. So am I wrong for setting hard boundaries with my mother-in-law after she tried to control my marriage under her roof? Or did I finally do what I should have done from the beginning?